Hi, everyone. Welcome to Film.Music.Media's Midsummer Music Matinee. I'm Kaya Savas. I'm the founder of Film.Music.Media, and we have an amazing panel of guests here to just talk shop and focus on scoring for strong characters. So let's get in and introduce our panel. So we have first up, we have the composer of the Tribeca and Netflix documentary, The Dream Life of George G. Stone. And she was also the co-composer for Disney Plus's Zombies 3. Please welcome Amit May Cohen.
Hello.
Hey.
Hi.
Next, we have a film and TV composer who recently composed for the action sci-fi thriller Corrective Measures. Please welcome George Streicher.
Hello, George.
Hello.
Hey, George. And then next, we have the composer for the HBO Max documentary series Edge of Earth and recent Emmy winner for his score to Netflix's Cat People. Please welcome Tyler Strickland. Hey there, Tyler. And last but not least, we have Bleeding Fingers music composers who recently worked on Apple TV's Prehistoric Planet, created by Jon Favreau. Please welcome Kara Talve and Anže Rozman.
Hi.
Hey guys. All right, so let's to kick this thing off. I want to ask. This is going to be for everybody, so we can go down the line. I'll call everyone out. But to start off, do the strong or prominent main characters in a narrative inform the sonic palette of a project, and how do you go about finding that palette? So do characters, and especially kind of the protagonist, the antagonist, kind of these, driving force of any plot, how do they kind of inform your palette and take the score in a certain direction? And we can, maybe start with Tyler.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I would say yes, absolutely. Sometimes we have characters that are a little bit more reserved, a little bit quieter. And sometimes you have characters that are more bold and aggressive on camera, but also, unscripted and documentary projects. There are a lot of, specifically in documentaries, I'd say there's a lot of characters that require a bit of a sensitive approach too with the music, for sure. Sometimes we have to be more delicate. Maybe what they're going through is more sensitive, and maybe the music needs to be reflective of that. Yeah.
And they're real people as well. So I thought you can't be,
yeah.
Gotta treat that a little bit more respect than a fictional character.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And then, you have like geographically appropriate directions you can take with the music and the instrumentation too that might need to come into play.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Amit, how about you? What is your take on scoring for kind of strong characters and how it kind of pushes your approach?
I think that first of all, I want to figure out what is the sonic palette for the general story. And then from that, I would figure out how to represent the characters. Because if I'm going for an orchestral hybrid score, like Zombies, for example, then from that, I would choose certain instruments to represent the zombies or the cheerleaders. But if I'm doing a more intimate score, like The Dream Life of George Stone, I would choose completely different instruments, but they all can represent the same characteristics. Like you can represent resilience with, a flute if you choose to.
Right.
So I think first you got to figure out what narrative within the film you're trying to bring out and represent. And then from that, you figure out your individual characters.
So you go about it finding the palette for the whole world first, and then and then you find the characters to kind of push and move that palette around. Awesome.
Yeah.
So I want to jump over to Anže and Kara, who have an experience of composing for very unique characters recently with Prehistoric Planet. So guys, tell me about that process and how you approached a whole cast of extinct animals.
You want to start?
Go ahead.
Well, yeah, it's we're dealing basically with extinct animals and basically made up stories. Well, not scientifically based made up stories of these characters.
Right.
But we always wanted to portray them as if the audience was actually watching these things unfold in front of them. So we wanted to make an illusion that they're watching a real life nature documentary like Planet Earth. but regarding the music, we also wanted to translate that, this was 66 million years ago. So we included a bunch of unique instruments in the score, like the Yabahar from Gorkum Sen. And for example, our mosasaur character, which is the biggest sea predator that has ever lived, like the size of the school bus, we used the giant subcontra bass flute. It just seemed fitting, like the really massive, low, boomy sound, and also just the size of the instrument. But a lot of times when we were composing for, specific characters, specific dinosaurs, we would create custom instruments for them. For example, for the Velociraptor, we created the Fat Rex instrument that we have somewhere behind. Oh, there it is.
Oh, there it is. Yeah.
And
that instrument is gaining a lot of notoriety recently, I've seen.
So we created the instrument. We didn't really know that we would use it for the Velociraptor, but then when we looked at the scene and they start playing the instrument, we were like, this is so fitting for this character. So yeah, and that combined with the real orchestra made the illusion, that you're kind of watching Planet Earth, but with dinosaurs, and the unique instruments were the dinosaurs, the orchestra, and the more traditional instruments are the more, what am I saying? Like the Planet Earth type score. Did that make sense? I'm sorry. If it did.
Makes sense.
Sounds like a dream job. Yeah, that's amazing.
Well, let's no, I also want to get George's perspective too. So George, talk to me from your perspective, and how do you approach characters, and does that influence your approach at all?
Totally. In the case of Corrective Measures, the overarching sort of theme was like that dirty Southern rock sound. So, and it takes place in a supervillain prison, and so really, it was like I knew that was the baseline for everything. So with certain characters, how do you contrast that? So you contrast it with different styles, or while kind of keeping everything homogenous under that hood of the dirty Southern rock thing. So, and obviously, Corrective Measures being kind of a comic book movie, everything's exclamation points. You have a lot of opportunity to go big and go loud with things. So the characters are very big and the characters are very forward, and they're all pretty unique. So I really, in the case of several characters, they have specific superpowers. So one of them's his superpower is electricity. So okay, that's probably going to have some kind of an electronic sound. I'm going to sample maybe some electrical arcs and things and put them into it, and make kind of neat percussion beds out of electronic, like actual electricity sounds and stuff like that. And one character listens to a lot of classical music, so I made a whole drum kit out of hitting on a grand piano, and gave him, different things that sort of fed into that. So yeah, definitely, literally in this case, the character is literally informed the music, as opposed to like, there's not a lot of room for subtext and corrective measures. So, but yeah, absolutely. And that made it really, really fun to be able to do that. And the themes and stuff, of course, too. So
absolutely. So yeah, speaking of themes, I want to ask everyone again, where do character themes come in? I know, when you tackle a project for the, when you're kind of getting started and getting your hands on it, you're trying to, and as Amit said, you're trying to find the, sonic world first. So maybe Amit, you can start us off, but how early on do you compose and decide these character themes? When you start creating a melody or creating a motif or something, does that come early on, or do you wait a little bit later till the characters more and it kind of speaks to you later on, or is that the first thing you try to crack? I'm curious, when in the process does that happen? So Amit, I would love to, if you kick us off.
Sure. I think I try to crack it down very early on. Does it happen? Yeah. Not always. I mean, if I can, which I definitely try, I will get all of the themes done. I like when themes also come up organically, when you try to write a scene that doesn't necessarily requires a theme, but then there's a motif that comes out with a melody or even like a sound or pad or whatever, and that influences your decision for a different theme or something. So I like happy accidents, like Bob Ross calls them. Yeah, but I feel like if you get it all earlier, it's easier to shape the film and the storyline, the arc. So doing that is probably the best technique.
Yeah. So Tyler, would you agree with that? Would you how does it for your process? When do you try to crack on character themes in your process?
No, absolutely. I mean, I'm a big fan of spending the first week or so on a project not really writing to picture, just coming up, sometimes for me, you know, just sitting at the piano and coming up with some chords and maybe as simple of a melody as possible that, you know, comes to mind when thinking about the project and the characters and, you know, what I know of the story before I go, you know, watching hours and hours of footage. So sometimes it comes to me really early on like that. Then also sometimes, like Amit was saying, it comes later, you know, and it doesn't have to necessarily be a melody. It can be a sound that's thematic. And I really enjoy that too. I think that's a big part of my process. Because, you know, we're all trying to make different sounds, and like the crazy thing that they had back there with the circle, what it looks like a frame drum or something with strings. I don't even know.
You're right.
I can
Whatever that sound is.
Anže,
like,
go grab that thing. Grab that thing. If people need to see it. I mean,
yeah, like I mean, you don't even really need to come up with a melody. I feel like whatever you play on that is thematic. So you know, and it's neat.
Wow, look at that.
That's so cool.
That's
Yeah.
beautiful.
So yeah, let's Anže and Kara, like you guys. Speaking of, you know, Tyler made a great point about finding a sound almost for, and you guys initially talked about how you had to find, you know, you picked certain instruments because they kind of just evoked certain characters. So I'm curious, when did you find those sounds? Were those early on in your process? Like maybe using this instrument as an example, when did that come into the process for kind of defining the raptors?
Yeah, so well, in general, we started, you know, coming up with these prototype instruments before Chaz, who actually built all of these, brought them to life. They were sort of just crappy prototypes of what we wanted it to be.
like here's our
Well, that one's already
raptor
done.
violin, but yeah,
Right.
this, like the prototype of this was basically just a bone with a cello string like wrapped around it and really held tightly, and I was like, oh, it makes a sound. And then
we were trying to find organic materials to create the instruments with, and we found this Native American trading post with a room of bones, and that's where we got all the materials, or some of them, and then we ordered some, and Chaz also made this 3D printed T-Rex
Wow.
skull.
That's so cool.
That's just for fun though.
Yeah.
but like what Amit said, happy accidents.
Yeah,
like
that's the Velociraptor.
the
for
Velociraptor
sure.
theme is like, I'm gonna try playing, like it's so simple. But it's basically like we were just watching the scene and we were recording, and I played this, and then it just kind of stuck. But that's kind of how I compose. I always go with the first bad idea. Conrad Pope taught me that. Go with your first bad idea. But I think Kara is a lot more meticulous, and you know, her melodies are much more beautiful than mine. But you actually spent time thinking about them for like a long time.
But also it's cool that because he can play these instruments. I'm not a string player. I play piano, so I feel like that sort of is how you came up with such cool motifs, because you had these instruments. But yeah, I wish I could play them. I can't get a sound out of it.
Yeah, for example, but sorry, just one more thing. For example, for the forests episode, the director wanted a theme.
Yeah.
Like, and he wanted the forest episode to feel the most organic. So we didn't really use much of the custom weird instruments. It's mostly just orchestra. And that's where you like came up with like the really cool forest theme.
Yeah.
But you actually spent some time thinking about it. And I think if I did it, it would never be as good.
No,
So Kara, do you just kind of work on do you do a couple of like versions before you present it? Do you kind of work things out, or do you try to throw it and see if it sticks, then take it back, or kind of what's your process to getting to that point?
With the themes.
Yeah.
Like the forest episode, I think that was a pretty good. It was kind of just first try, and he liked it, because it's not the, there's the overarching theme of the actual series, which was written by Hans Zimmer and Andrew Christie. So
Right.
that's a theme that we pull from throughout the series, but then each episode itself had its own sort of soundscape. And so the forests episode was more traditional, and then it had its own big majestic melody for the forest.
Absolutely. So George, talk to us about your process. And are you, out of everyone who shared, do you kind of wait till it comes? Do you start to crack that first? Where in the process do character themes come in for you?
I'm definitely, to Tyler's point, I like to do my homework before I kind of start writing to picture it all, and that's how I learned is it's best to watch the movie and then get away from it and go just write and explore and blue sky, as they say, and nothing, no bad ideas, just go do it. So I'll open up a big project which might end up becoming my template later on when I start making the movie, scoring the actual movie. And I just play around, and I'll send stuff to the director or the editor or the producer, whoever I'm working with. And, I make a list when I see the movie, and I kind of, my impressions of the characters. And in the case of Corrective Measures, very clear, like I know exactly who the bad guys are, who the good guys are, and all kinds of stuff like that. And then I just go explore. And finding themes is really important if the movie allows for that, if it feels appropriate, but also finding the sonic palette for it. In the case of Corrective Measures, they had put in a bunch of needle drops of old country western kind of music, and then some newer stuff that I'd never heard. So like, oh, okay, immediately that's the kind of palette we're going for, and I can sort of dial that up. And I infused some orchestral stuff in places where it felt appropriate, but I knew it was going to be a small ensemble live, rock band essentially, with kind of stuff tossed on top of that. But yeah, all of that was figured out a week or two before I even started writing a picture. And having those themes ready at that point, if everything's kind of done and you have like 20 minutes or something of pre-composed music, the job is kind of just doing variation throughout the whole thing, and sort of finding it to develop and where it feels appropriate to following the contour of the storyline and things like that. So it sort of makes your job easier, but then I've definitely had times where you're writing it and a new idea will replace an old one, and or a sound will come in. You're like, oh, I know, I'll just use that throughout.
Right.
But yeah,
absolutely. So, and then now I also want to another question for the group. I want to piggyback, Tyler kind of already touched upon it. So Tyler, maybe talk about, maybe we can dive into a bit more to kick us off. You're talking about composing for documentaries versus fiction. And so when you treat a character in a documentary versus a character from fiction, how hard is that line between approaches? You're trying to craft an emotional pull for the audience either way, but how do you treat each one separately, and if at all? I know you kind of talked about how to treat maybe one a little bit more respect, not going over the top with certain things. So I'm just curious from your point of view.
Yeah, specifically with just a cue or a theme?
Or a theme for, like, if you're creating a theme for a character, whether it's a real person, in real life versus a fictitious character.
It's really interesting. I think I think as far as putting musical themes to real life documentary subjects, I think that process has come a long way over the last few years. But, I think for a long time it was like, oh, we don't want that. We don't want to make this feel like we're manipulating this person's true authentic self and their character. I think that's come a long way. And lately I've been working on some things where it's like, oh, that character, in the subject in this documentary, I guess we could say subjects for documentaries and characters for fictional films.
Sure.
And sometimes the subjects are like Oh yeah, I think clarinet just works with him or her, it's just, it really just works. So, let's gravitate towards that. um I don't know if there's really, I think what I'm trying to say is that I don't know if there is much of a difference between
Right. Yeah.
you anymore. There are certain things about scoring documentaries that you need to be a little bit more sensitive about when you're approaching a cue. Obviously, if it's like a really delicate moment, if there's any kind of like political aspect in it, that you need to be sensitive or aware of. We have those conversations with directors all the time when I'm working on docs. Like I just did in Edge of the Earth, there's an episode. Each episode is in a different part of the world, but specifically there's one in Kyrgyzstan, and there's a whole, Islamic prayer song thing going on, and so like that's a whole conversation where, okay, that's a really big important musical element of this episode, but I need to be delicate with it.
Right.
I'm not really sure how that would be approached in a fictional film, but I'm sure probably the same way.
I think so, because I think people can lean into those kind of cultural music and certain instruments and be like, when you open the Middle East, you got to hear certain instruments or certain things. And I actually just interviewed a good friend of mine, Dom Lewis, who did the new Bullet Train coming up, and he was like, I don't want to go full Japanese with the music. I want it to be more of the characters and the world. And he took a distinct choice not to really just lean in too heavily with it, because he probably thought it probably made feel either too cheap or insensitive. I don't know. So I think, yeah, you can work in fiction as well, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool.
So I'm for everyone else wants to jump in. Has anyone else had experiences between scoring, fiction and nonfiction and character writing for themes and stuff like that?
I mean, maybe if we're talking like about natural history, nature documentaries, which
Yes,
we've
yeah,
done quite a few of, it's that your characters are not speaking at all.
right.
So you have to be a lot more on the nose sometimes on what you are trying to say. And we had like a lot of, spotting sessions before each episode for Prehistoric Planet with the producers of the show. And they laid out the story arcs very closely for us, even if we were just working on very crude animatics at first. But it's so crucial to be able to nail the specific emotions at a specific time. And I think if you're working on a more narrative documentary, you can be a lot more subtle with your portraying of emotions. And here it's, with like scoring for animals, they don't speak. So you really need to let the audience know what they're actually doing. If there's just like a mouse in a field, it can be just grazing or it can be in grave danger, but maybe the directors want you to just think that it's grazing, but it is in grave danger. But as a composer, your job is to portray those emotions as the directors and producers want at a specific moment.
Absolutely. Well, let's jump into a little bit more specific thing. I'm going to talk to everybody, but I want to come back to Anže and Kara. You already showed us one of the most amazing, unique custom instruments, but I'm curious, is there anything else that you guys created for Prehistoric Planet for certain dinosaurs? There's certain landscapes or anything? Were there any other cool custom instruments that were used in the score?
Yeah. There are plenty of them.
Show and tell, yes.
This one's the Hadra cello. It's like a baby cello, like for youth. Yeah, it's like, right? Isn't this like elementary school cello?
Elementary school cello with I think it's a moose bone on it.
Yeah.
It sounds kind of like it's kind of like a doo-dook.
Yeah.
It just kind of fit with the slow walking hadrosaurs usually.
Yeah.
We would like, even if we just had like normal brass or a woodwind ensemble, we would Caro, it'd say, oh, can you record the hadro cello on like all of the 4 lines? So it's like you have the brass in combination with this, and it just makes them sound, I don't know, more ancient or plotty.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you guys are really trying to create otherworldly feel, you know, because we've never experienced these animals in nature, you know, so that was kind of the goal of it as well, right?
Yeah, we wanted people to question what they're listening to, and it even when the directors first heard certain instruments, they were like, oh, what even is that that we're listening to? So I think that's the reaction we were looking for.
Yeah, that's exactly like the audience is like, yeah, what is that instrument? I can't really put my finger on it. And we saw some YouTube discussions of like people debating what the Velociraptor theme is played on.
Wow.
And
you did well when you're creating, you know, chatter on YouTube and they're trying to break it down.
But this is like, I don't know if please stop us if we don't have time. This is basically the first instrument that we created. It's yeah, it's I think this one is a deer bone with a little petrified wood thing here for the bridge. And let's see if I can make a sound out of it. Oh, so it just has a really cheap Amazon contact microphone on it. But this was
all you need.
This one was a lot like used for our raptors, like our dromaeosaur, and then just to create textures throughout. It's basically almost in all cues in some format. It's very hard to play any like distinct melody on it.
Right.
Cool. I don't know how well you guys heard it, but
no, it came through. That was awesome. No, that's amazing. I mean, you guys got to literally become crazy, you know, experiments and, you know, scientists building these things. It sounds like just such an amazing project. I mean, overall.
Yeah, it was really fun.
Very, very fulfilling in that aspect, of course.
Absolutely. So so I want to continue on. I want to jump over to Tyler. So Tyler, can you walk us through a few of your favorite character-driven scores for unscripted and scripted projects? In particular, how did that previous experience inform your work on Edge of the Earth?
Yeah, so I've worked on a handful of narrative projects, some TV stuff, Castle Rock, and you know, some cool thriller kind of narrative TV shows. And you know, some of it comes into play. I think obviously, like, I've been doing documentaries for much longer, probably 10 years plus. But where I'm kind of headed towards now is getting the freedom, and maybe this is just coming from long-term relationships I've built with directors, but getting the freedom to kind of go to the extreme with the music in some of these documentaries. I'm also working on, you know, Edge of the Earth is this like expansive, all helicopter footage, you know, IMAX quality type stuff. And it's these athletes around the world and super remote destinations on the side of a wall that's never been rock climbed, you know, or surfing big waves in Africa that have never been seen before. And so the music is definitely big, and it's, you know, I mean, it's all kind of a new experience for me, because a lot of the times in documentary people are asking you to do like less. But maybe there's some parallels, I think, to maybe the Prehistoric, you know, show that you guys are working on, where it's like, it's just beautiful and it all just really demands big music, like epic, a good experience with the music, some sounds that you haven't heard before. We did some really cool stuff with the music in that show with some vocals, because, you know, a lot of it is about these athletes in these places doing things nobody's ever done before, on walls that have never been climbed, waves that have never been surfed. They're like trying to snowboard and there's avalanches falling all over the place. It's insane. And so they're completely out of control all the time. And we wanted this voice of like Mother Earth, this element that is always in control of the environment that they're always in. And so for us, that was vocals, and we used this amazing vocalist Ari Mason for some, you know, like just this Mother Earth quality. So her voice was really like a character in the show that you never see, but you know it's there in a way.
I mean, Earth is in the title. I mean, in the title of the series. So I mean, that's your character right there. You know, you have to have that present in the score. I think that's amazing. That's
no. So it was never like, oh, this is a character that you need to score because they're on camera, but it was actually, something that just sort of, kind of like what Amit was saying. Like it became a theme later on, maybe halfway through scoring the second episode, that I was like, oh wait, we did some really cool stuff in the first episode. I think that's a theme, like a sonic palette that we need to return to in every episode. And then we ended up doing that. But yeah.
That's awesome. So let's jump over to George. So George, your recent project, Corrective Measures, is an action-packed film that kind of blends a few genres together. So can you talk about how you approached scoring the film and kind of creating a balance and I guess finding the right tone and take us through that.
Yeah, no, it was, there's a lot going on in that movie. Score-wise, it had the bass line, again, was that sort of dirty Southern rock sound throughout the sort of, Southern prison movie sound. And, but there's a lot of different characters that demanded different styles of music, like the conductor, who's the supervillain with the electrical powers, had more of his big scene, and all his little cues and stuff would have more hints of kind of electronic music and those kinds of elements. And then the character of the Lobe that Bruce Willis played is his sound is more sort of, I hesitate to say classical, but kind of in that vein, more it's just a solo piano and cello kind of thing. And when they'd all come together in this big action scene at the end of the big prison break scene, where we kind of go into more metal stuff, but I try to keep the Southern rock sound alive with keeping slide guitars in there, even if they're completely distorted and face melting. I try to keep them, I try to keep the Southern articulation, I guess you could say, in that.
Yeah, for sure.
I think that's kind of it. It really even if I was veering off the track entirely into a completely different sonic territory, especially near the end, we didn't touch any metal stuff until all hell breaks loose at the end of the movie. I tried to keep that sound still alive in there, whether it was slide guitar, acoustic guitar would show up somewhere. Any chance I got to sort of keep our foot in that ring throughout the whole score.
Yeah. Absolutely. No, I mean, congratulations. I think the end product is, I don't hate to use the word product, but the end film is fantastic.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate that. I'm happy with it too.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, you should be. Amit, so you recently, let's jump over to you. You recently composed for Zombies 3. What was it like composing for a fan favorite, movie series like that? And what was your approach, to the whole thing?
It's super fun because a lot of kids they're waiting for that. It's also nerve-wracking because a lot of kids are waiting for that.
Pressure.
Those kids are also my cousins, so I know the bar is really high. And kids are actually not that easy to satisfy. If you make a mistake and make like a lame track, then they're gonna point it out. So you don't want to do that. I think the coolest thing about Zombies is that the whole production team was just so awesome. So there was always like this really good energy. Whenever we went to a meeting, the room just felt good, So there was just a general aura of like excitement and everybody just loving the project, which makes it so fun. And you're so excited to work on it. I think especially for the third one being the last movie in the series, there was a lot of expectations, and like all of I don't know if you saw any of the promos, but all of the promos are like, we had to step it up, and we really wanted to just go for it. So it kind of makes you feel like, oh, okay, I gotta really go for it now. Not that we didn't before, but it was even more extra. So I think that allowed us to actually step outside of our sonic palette for the first and the second one, and to do some unpredictable stuff. Like there was a new characters all of a sudden. We had the aliens, and we wanted to avoid using like a theremin because it's so obvious, unless it's only for a comedic moment. So I think we used the theremin maybe like 3 times in the entire score, but only when it just like you didn't expect it, and then when you hear it, it's like, oh my god. But the whole theme for the aliens is actually, and we call it the outer worldly bossa nova. So it's like based on bossa nova, but it's not really, so you can't really pinpoint it. And the instruments are kind of wacky. It's like, percussion instruments you would give kids, like those that you have a stem and you do that. I forget the name, but anyway, so it's like, it's unexpected. And I think that approaching the music with that in mind made the process even better. Because even the people in the production didn't expect it. When we came up with that theme and showed it in the meeting, it was so fun to just see like the director and producer, they're all laughing. So yeah, in that sense, fun and nerve-wracking is my answer.
Fun and nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it sounds like you had an amazing time, and it sounds like you guys were able to evolve the take the music in new directions. It must be fun to just continue working, with those characters and new characters and pushing it and growing the score, in a sense.
Definitely.
So I want to go around again and just kind of ask everyone, what is your from your recent projects, or a favorite character theme that you wrote? Maybe there's a unique instrument, maybe something unique about the character, but what sticks out to you? What do you look back on and go, oh, that's really creatively rewarding for me? I look back at it, it's a real favorite of mine. So yeah, what stands out in your mind as a favorite character theme, and what made it your favorite? So Amit, maybe you could just continue and tell us. Yeah.
So can I plug in 2 projects?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, cool. So the Dream Life of Georgie Stone, obviously, we were not trying to like create one theme for Georgie. Like the whole movie, it's Georgie's many themes. I think the most interesting aspect about her theme is that Maya, the director, asked me to make the sound of a thought being made. So like your brain is moving. And my initial instinct was actually to record a bicycle, spokes being like spinning, English, sorry. And like sticking like, sticks in it or different like metal, whatever. So you make this like tuck, 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 tuck sound, and then bringing it to the computer and slowing it down and, adding a lot of effects to it. So there was always like an element behind her sound, her theme, that was just moving and making those like clunk, 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 clunk. And it's also unpredictable rhythm. So that was really fun. It plays throughout the entire movie. And then another theme I really enjoyed doing, I just did a documentary limited series with Dara Taylor called 37 Words. It's part of the 50/50 documentary for ESPN. And in episode 2, I think we have a theme for the Yale rowing crew. And what we wanted to represent is actually not the crew, but the feeling of water. And I think that one was just so, I think I was very moved while writing for that, which is always fun when you write something that just makes you like feel emotions and want to cry when you write it. So yeah, there was a lot of motion, and the palette for that was slightly different than the rest of the show. So that stayed with me.
Absolutely. I mean, that sounds incredibly rewarding.
Yeah.
George, how about you? Is there a favorite character theme from your recent projects, or that really sticks out to you? Something personal, something that, and what made it special?
Um, I mean, I personally relate to corrective measures in so many different ways.
Really?
But no, there
From
was
your hard past.
exactly, yeah. No, I had a ton of fun working on it. I got to do a lot of things that I've never done before. Really, most of the stuff I've done has been orchestral music. So this was a chance to really dive into the kind of hybrid sound design sort of thing. I think my favorite cue in the movie is the reveal of the Lobe, where we first hear he's the, the head honcho supervillain in the whole prison, and he's the guy who had the sampled like hitting the grand piano for his drum kit, and like all the metal on the piano and things. And just, I don't know, just the way that cue sort of timed out and the slow reveal as they take his mask off and stuff was really, really fun to do. And also in that cue and other cues with the Lobe, I tried to find something, because his power is his mind, like he can, control things, control people. So I was like, well, they're asked, what are the frequencies of the human brain and where do they operate? And so I found this little chart of like all these things, and they're pretty much inaudible. You couldn't hear it, but at like 30 hertz, I just threw that in a synthesizer and then distorted the hell out of it, and I used that as this kind of woof, woof sound for his character when he's using his power as kind of a sub bass sort of synth thing. But that shows up in that cue. And also, since he listens to classical music a lot, I did this little sort of knockoff quasi Bach motif thing, the little descending piano thing as that comes in. It's a really easy thing to kind of plug in anywhere, because it can go against any melody and stuff. So that was really fun to do. Yeah.
That sounds amazing. I mean, that's I just love the thinking behind that. Like, that's just so creative.
Oh, thanks.
Tyler, how about you? Any favorite themes that stick out for you?
Yeah. I mean, just because we've been talking about it, and I already kind of said it, but I think, most recently, the Edge of the Earth, the Earth theme, the Mother Earth theme is just
Mother Earth theme,
been a really rewarding one. I feel like what we did with it, also recording live orchestra and then kind of blending that melody both with vocals and the whole orchestra playing it at the same time, it just came through like really, really well in the show. It's probably some of my more proud moments.
Yeah, that's awesome.
In what I've come up with. But yeah, and yeah, unfortunately, like I've got all these cool projects I'm working on now that I can't talk about because they're not like we all are, just working in a dark room by ourselves until people say it's okay to talk about it.
Right, you gotta respect the NDAs. You gotta respect the NDAs.
Yeah, I know. But like I've done some great stuff for, like, we did a John Wayne Gacy show for Peacock that I think maybe we talked about last year, and that was a extremely very different emotional direction for the theme in that show, but big melodic theme for John Wayne Gacy in that show too.
Wow, that's a character for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
So Anže and Kara, Anže, I can probably speak for you because I know we talked about it. I know the Raptors were very, but I'm not going to put words in your mouth. But tell us favorite themes from from Prehistoric Planet, or anything recently you worked on that really kind of stuck out and is that you find very rewarding and memorable.
Yeah, I mean, the Velociraptor theme is my favorite, but we already talked about that one. There's a scene that's like became like a fan favorite, I guess, from Prehistoric Planet, is the Dreadnoughtus scene in deserts where you have these 2 giant sauropods fighting it out to the death. And we tried not to go generic epic in anywhere in the series, really. But that scene was just like, you have these 2 largest land creatures fighting it out. So we used like giant drums, some custom giant drums and electric guitars, and then the whole brass section playing in octaves, just the bum, 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 the motive of the main theme. And yeah, now like when we wrote it, I thought, it's an okay cue, but now seeing that people really enjoy listening to it, and that it's kind of becoming meme material, and people putting the music on like Godzilla and Kong fighting it out. It's epic over the top, but I think it makes an effect in the series because you only get the epic over the top in the Dreadnoughtus fight scene and the Mosasaur battle, which are like another 2 male Mosasaurs fighting it out. Yeah, and that's what makes, I think, the scenes special, because they're just like unique.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
yours is the Hadrosaur, right?
Anže definitely has pictures on his wall with the dinosaur and the name, right? I mean, you've got a cheat sheet, right? Like there's not even all these names.
They've memorized. You guys have memorized probably every dinosaur. Like,
Yeah, if you want to look at the soundtrack, the titles
amazing.
are all different dinosaur species.
So great.
So that will help you learn them.
Love that.
Yeah.
But Kara-
Hatzegopteryx.
Oh yeah, you should.
Yeah, Hatzegopteryx was a really good one, because
Yeah.
that was part of the forests episode, and we got to be really big and melodic for him as well. He's one of the only ones that has like a big melodic motif like that. So
oh wow,
yeah,
that's
that was-
awesome.
The problem is, not all of the dinosaurs reappear in the series.
yeah, so we
Right.
kind of had to decide, who's reappearing, who's a strong character that's coming back, and who really needs a theme. And
Absolutely. So I kind of want to wind things down a little bit, wrap up. We've talked about so much this evening, but I kind of want to go back around and just a fun question. We've been talking about character themes this entire time, and I'm just like, I want to know what everyone's favorite character themes, that you love, that you either grew up watching, listening, not composed by you, your favorite characters from cinema, from TV, whatever. I'll go first. And then one that really sticks into my mind, that maybe not conventional, but I love Harmonica's theme from Once Upon a Time in the West. Ennio Morricone. I think it's just perfect, and the way he blends it into the final duel and everything. I thought that was chef's kiss. So, but I'll go. Amit, is there any big theme from film scores that stick with you, that resonate with you?
I think my favorite score of all time is Princess Mononoke by
Oh, wow,
Joe
perfect.
Hisaishi. That's actually the reason why I chose to do film scoring, because I heard
That's
that when I was
amazing.
young. So yeah, the just all of the themes there, they're just so
Yeah,
phenomenal. Yeah.
that's a great answer. Absolutely. George, how about you? Any character theme that sticks out?
Oh man, that's a tough question.
Not your
Recently-
favorite, just one. Just one maybe.
This is it. This is the one. I only get one shot at this.
Yeah.
I'll say lately, this is so random, but I've fallen in love with the score to Casper from James Horner.
That is
And
a
there's-
beautiful score.
Oh my God, it's like
Makes me
and
weep.
Oh yeah, and for it to be part of that movie, it's just like, what?
Yeah.
It is the I don't know what you'd call it. I guess it's Casper's theme, but it's this really haunting, sad,
that
lonely
Piano. Dun,
Yep.
dun, dun, dun. Yeah,
Exactly, that's the one.
yeah.
It's incredible, and
it's
it
burned in
really
here. Yeah.
it never ceases to kind of blow me away.
Yeah.
And all his little variations on it. So yeah, that one for sure is, and then the Jumanji score too, the James
Oh,
Horner
yeah.
Jumanji score. It's
Oh.
incredible.
Casper, that's perfect. I love
Casper,
that.
yeah.
Yeah. Tyler, how about you?
The two ones that we hum at my house often would be Indiana Jones, for sure.
There you go.
And,
Perfect. Has to be.
And yeah, X-Files, because it's my wife's ringtone, but also I just can never get that in my head.
Perfect. I mean, yeah, that's one of the most iconic television themes of all time.
Classics.
Absolutely. And I went to John Williams's 90th celebration at the Kennedy Center in DC, and he played Marion's theme. He didn't play he put that one on the back burner for that one. So, but you'll hear it at the bowl, I'm sure, this summer. Anže and Kara, how about you? What are two iconic themes that you really love?
The one that came to mind right away was Succession, the Nicholas Bertel.
Oh yeah, oof,
I love that theme. I think
So
about
good.
it all the time. I wish I wrote that.
Yeah, that's great. For me, I think Red Violin by John Corigliano.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely amazing. And then if we're speaking about like character motives, I think almost no other film does it better than Lord of the Rings, Howard Shore.
Oh,
Mm.
oh,
Like the
yeah.
amount of leitmotifs and melodies is like just crazy.
Yeah.
I'm a big
That's-
fan.
I mean, those scores are just, I can't even, you can't, I mean, it's like a masterclass of just scoring. I mean, it's just like, Bear McCreary has his work cut out for him on the
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings show. I don't envy Bear tackling that. But everyone, I just want to thank everybody for all their time and all their insight and perspective, and you guys sharing all about your work. It's been so inspiring. So thank you, Amit, George, Tyler, Kara, Anže, for being here with us tonight. I want to thank Impact 24 for helping put this together for Film Music Media, and we have more panels coming for the Midsummer Matinee. So stay tuned for more.